you because there's a few things and I hope you don't mind me bringing this up here because
Sure.
there's a few things that I've come across that I wanted to be cognizant of here, that I've listened to a number of your interviews, and including the music, that I want to be very careful in what has been asked of you and what hasn't been asked of you.
Okay.
So that way the conversation is not redundant for you.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I thought I would share with you about how I came across you and the group, because it's kind of odd because I can't really remember what it was that introduced me to it. I think if I recall correctly, I could be wrong, but I think the group followed me on social media. And then when I found a new follower, because you get notified for all that stuff, that's when I clicked onto the group, and then I looked into the background, and I thought I was interested to speak with you about your story, because once I started listening to the music, I forgot about how, because I grew up listening to a variety of music here, but one of the music that I tend to forget about is ska music, because that's mostly what you were associated with here.
Yeah.
So quite frankly, if I recall correctly, I think once I saw that you guys were following me on my social media, and I can't remember if it was the show social media or if my personal social media, I don't remember which one it was. But once I saw that you guys were following me, then I started looking to the music. Then I remember, like, oh, I forgot this music exists out there.
Yeah.
So, and then in turn, once I had reached out to you last year, and I kind of want to get into here because there's actually something that I wanted to share with you that I hoped you would. I'm not sure how you'll feel about it, but it's a good thing though. But so what happened was so once I looked into the music and listened to your story, I became really intrigued about what it was about your journey that I actually want to delve into a bit further here. So when I had reached out to you last year, to make a long story short, we worked it out, and then for a while I hadn't heard back from you. And honestly, this is the part where I wanted to tell you this, because I literally thought when I hadn't heard back from you, it's because I thought that maybe you saw one of the videos and thought I sucked, and like I'm not talking to this guy. That's the honest truth. So I remember there was a period of, like, I think of a month, where I was looking at everything that I've done. I thought maybe she saw a review that I did,
Oh
one of the
no.
episodes I did, and I was awful. And I remember thinking that I got to step it up here, because if I'm not getting response, and I'm not saying that you were intentionally ignoring me, that's not what I'm implying here, but
Yeah.
it was one of those situations where I remember doubting myself, where I thought, am I really that bad? It's like, because obviously you get people who don't respond, and that's normal. That's a standard experience that I've been going through for quite some time now. But when I went through that, I remember that particular period where, when I hadn't heard from you, that actually did help me out, where I started reevaluating how I conduct myself in interviews and how I conduct certain things. So I hope you don't mind me sharing that here, because of that experience, I actually learned a lot about myself during that period, because I started questioning, how I do certain things that maybe someone saw and didn't like it, and therefore didn't want to go through with it. And as a
Yeah.
result of that, I worked harder to conduct
Oh, I've
better.
had things like that happen too, where you're like, okay, like I applied for this festival. Maybe I need to like sharpen up my, press kits, or how I fill out applications, or how
Right.
you know what I mean? Like it's kind of normal. Or even if like someone's like, hey, we need to talk. And you're like, oh my God,
Right.
you go through your head, like, what are all the things that they could possibly want to talk to me about? But
Right.
honestly, for me, it's just been health stuff. And again, I like, maybe I don't want to get too far into that. I don't really want to like I'm someone who's, again, I hate that we're not, because I don't want to say too much before we record, but, no, wait, we are recording. So this is, but, like I've always been a bit of an open book person, but at the same time, when it comes to the band, it's like, okay, I've been told that I'm kind of an oversharer. So I'm trying not to overshare as much, but I'm also just such an honest person that I feel like the truth is just easier to kind of come out with, as opposed to being like, okay, what dulled down version did I give people? So like ever since September of last year, I've actually been dealing with like a growth on my pancreas, which is, was really scary at first. At first, they were like, they referred me to an oncologist, and they're like, you have a tumor, like, of course, all these scary words. And then like you go and you get to like tests, and they find out it's actually benign. It's not cancerous, but it is causing all kinds of problems. So I've had that kind of going on and off since September of last year. And I think like sometimes, again, like it takes a toll on your mental health. And then things started to pick up again, right? So then it's like things are reopening, and then suddenly you've got, like 20 interview requests all at once. Plus, like, you know, I own a bar on the side that's reopening. Then, you know, shows are starting again and I have to do rehearsals. And I was just so, because it's just me, right? Like nobody else really does all this stuff. I have to make the arrangements for the rehearsals and I have to orchestrate everything and set up all the interviews. No, but I can't be like, hey, can someone else take this interview for me? Like it's really got to be my availability. And I think I just kind of recognized that I was getting burnt out and I was like, I just need a break. So it was definitely not anything personal. It's just to the so busy and so much going on. And then with the health stuff going on, like trying to prioritize that and not really wanting to talk about it with anyone either. So I just kind of thought it was best to just like, I appreciate your patience and like, you know, you have the best follow-up out of anyone. I feel like anyone else would have been like,
really? Okay. Wow.
But yeah, like, I mean, I definitely want to talk to you. It's just sometimes I also feel like interview requests all come in at the same time too. Like you'll get like 20 and I'm like, I honestly, like if I schedule this with you, I'm going to be scheduling it for a time that I then can't do. And things are up in the air with my schedule where things change last minute or, you know, I think like also I had to reschedule with you and then health things pop up. And I've got this like weird anomaly, allergic reaction thing that keeps happening and they think it's just stress related. So that was also happening. So it's just when all these things start to pile up, I just like, I'm very bad at saying no. I'm one of those yes girls. It's like, okay, I'll figure it out. I'll make it work. And I think when that happened last year, I started to realize like I have to have more firm boundaries and just be like, I don't have time and I would love to do it, but just like cannot right now.
Well, I mean,
trying to say yes to everyone.
Again, I hope I'm not giving the impression that, you know, that I'm trying, that I was like saying, it wasn't that. It really was like, for some reason, that experience for me, like made me work harder towards something because again, because the thing is that a lot of times you don't get a lot of feedback from certain people that you would interact with. And sometimes the feedback can be kind of, you know, cordial. Yeah, it's kind of, you know, whatever. And for some reason at that time, like I said before, I remember just thinking I think I suck and I think I need to work harder. Like, no, and I'm being that serious because it really showed me something that I probably took for granted in some areas here where I thought this is fine. This is the way it's got to be. And because I kind of have a formula, I kind of did have a formula about it. And then I realized that that's not going to work for me anymore, which is why I told you before, I don't want to do an interview. I'm sorry, dude. I don't do an intro because it's awkward for me. But the point I'm getting at here is this, that, you know, when you finally had the availability to do this here, I was really looking forward to talking to you because the things that I've come across with you that I've listened to in previous conversations you've had in the past, like I said before, certain things I picked out that I thought were really unique that weren't necessarily delved into much, that I kind of wanted to go down that rabbit hole, if you will, where I can see how things have changed for you from that time. Because here's the thing that I want to give you a credit here for, because when I had, after that period where I wasn't, when I hadn't heard from you, I listened to various music you've done, and the one song I came across was a cover that you guys had done for the Decent Criminal song "Deviant."
Oh yeah,
I loved that a song that you guys had done. I remember I fell in love with it right away. I was like, "This is
oh my god,
song."
Yeah.
So when I found that it was a cover, because I did see it in the description, I was actually kind of hesitant to listen to the original because I love what you guys had done. So for a while, I did not listen to the original song because I never heard of Decent Criminal before.
Yeah.
And then when I finally heard the original song, I was like, this is fucking incredible. So I reached out to them and I got a chance to talk to Hunter, and I let him know that because of you and the group, I was introduced to your music and I fell in love with your guys' group. And then we had a conversation last year. We kind of went from there. So I gave you a shout out in that particular conversation because it was because of you I was introduced to them.
Oh, I didn't even know that. He never even mentioned that to me. It's funny because I talked to him, like he doesn't live near me, lives in California, but we stay in touch. Like we went to like Mexico together, like we're good buddies. So, but I remember like the first time I heard Deviant too was like through a mutual friend who played it. And I was just like, what is this band? What is this sound? Like just instantly fell in love with Decent Criminal. And then now they're really good friends of mine, which I think is super cool. But I love hearing that because I can actually be like, hey guys, someone discovers your band. Because I think usually it's, the opposite where they will, they're such like supporters where they're like, hey, like Hunter told me about you, like kind of like we're the little like brother that they're taking under their wing a little bit. I just admire them so much. So I really appreciate that compliment. It's not like, and again, deviant, like I'm sure you've probably gone into Decent Criminal, like done a deep dive now, but like for me, like my favorite song changes all the time. But
mine's still Expectations.
I was just gonna say Expectations. That's my song. I have that like anytime I have a bad day, that's the one I put on.
Yes.
And it's like almost like the Beatles meets like, I don't even know. And I don't want to say the Beatles is an insult. I want to say that is like it just has that, you know, because some people are like the Beatles, like everyone has their opinion, but I just that sound, that vintage kind of.
I think of it as the Beatles meets California is how I look at it.
Yeah, it's like Beach Boys Beatles essentially,
more or less,
without the cheesiness. You know what I mean? But it's their songwriting is so good, and I mean Hunter has I think a bunch of other projects he's been in. But
Human Issue is another one he's got, which I really am a big fan of as well.
Drum for, and again, I was never really a big Dwarves fan, but I know Mikey. I think you probably know about Mikey and his uke, and he's. We've done a couple of those videos. You've probably seen them around, but huge fan of the Dwarves. So when he was like, "Oh my God, Hunter used to be the drummer in the Dwarves," he was like nerding out over it, and I was like, couldn't name one song. Sorry, Dwarves, I apologize, but yeah, it's just funny how you discover different things through people, and you know the 6 degrees of separation there. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, well, and the thing is that you know, because of that introduction, it's funny because then it's really weird because when I checked out, because this is going to be another thing I'm going to give you a shout out to because of you were more or less a catalyst here, and I'm not blowing smoke when I say because this is the truth. So you know, listening to your cover, the group's cover of Decent Criminals Deviant, and then of course you know when you watch one video, it kind of shows the next set of other videos that is related to what you saw. Then I was introduced to 2:30. Because when I saw one of your music videos, I forgot which one it was. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I forgot what song it was that I heard.
They covered Me. Is that the one you're talking about? Where they did it? I think
so. I don't remember because I remember
Revolution because I know they.
I think that's the one. Yeah. So, having listened to them, it's going to sound. I hope they don't mind me sharing this because I'm not trying to seem as throwing anyone up because it's not the case. But I feel like I should tell because there's a funny story behind it because then. I reached out to them and I hadn't heard from them. That's fine. And then I reached out to them almost a year later this year. And I think Max replies, "Hey, I'm so sorry. We missed this email. Let's set something up." And then something along the way where we had to postpone it, which is, you know, which I won't mention here. But it all really started from, you know, my introduction to your group. And then from there, I got introduced to other sides of the music that I had quite frankly kind of forgotten about for quite some time. So like I said, open up this rabbit hole of artists that I was never aware of. And really because of that, I started to become more and more aware of the local scene. So then as a result of that, I started talking to other groups, you know, that are just up and coming, if you will. So I have to give you a lot of credit that if it wasn't for, I recall that I think it was your group that followed me on social media. If it wasn't for that happening, who knows if I would ever discover groups like Decent Criminal, yourself, 2:30. Other groups
I'm glad that you see that as a good thing. That's great.
So here's what I wanted to get into here with you then, because you know, I had listened to your story before about how, you know, you just talked before about how you have various things you do, full-time gigs, you run a bar and run the music and everything else that's coming with that here. Because I know you just had done a recording out in California not too long ago, at least as of this recording, and then. The one thing that I remember that you had talked about when it came to the music that I felt like I really wanted to ask you, and I hope you don't mind me digging in here, is because when you started to, you know, obviously when COVID had happened, it pulled a halt to a lot of things. And one of the things that I remember, I think at the time prior or just after the whole shutdown, it seemed like, you know, everyone was very skeptical about how things will be moving forward. Where are things going to be back to normal? And if so, how long will it take? And if so, what the restrictions are going to be? Because I know Canada at certain points was pretty much on a lockdown for a long period of time,
and then open and then lockdown again. Like it was kind of that yo-yo part, and it was really really hard because you would you never wanted to trust that it was for real because you've had it yanked away from you. Like there were times where they're like, okay, we're out of lockdown, everything's open, and then literally 7 days later shut it all down again. So it was definitely hard on us for sure because of the like back and forth that we went through for so long. So
and then what I was trying to get an understanding now for yourself is that and I'm trying to see how I can ask a question without making it sound redundant here. But the thing is that I was curious about now that things have more or less come back because you started playing more shows lately, and obviously I'm sure everyone was very excited to get back on stage. And, you know, I know in one of your recent posts, you posted out there that you had one of the most successful shows you've had in quite some time, where you had a big turnout and a lot of people were reacting to that.
I feel like I say that every time. Like every time we play a show, I'm like, it was the best show we've ever played.
Right. Well,
So it's
I
like,
understand.
I mean, it's good that improves too. But yeah, it was for the first time since like our album release, we were able to play a full capacity, like sold out show, which was really cool.
But and that's the thing I wanted to ask you about here too, because I'm wondering if for yourself, if you had, if something had changed for you, and what I mean by the question is that from what you had experienced before playing, you know, you've got, obviously you loved it, but being away for a period of time and then getting back into the swing of things here, has anything for you changed about how your approach is and how you perceive things and how you look at things along the way that made you realize that the things that you may have liked before, you probably don't like as much now, and the things you thought worked before don't work as well for you now, because of the climate change that has, you know, that COVID had affected pretty much the whole world. But in this case, for yourselves, where going back out on stage, is there some sort of hesitation, or not necessarily a hesitation, but just a bit of a cautionary approach to how you will look at certain things that you may want to reconsider because of the major setbacks everyone had to go through because of the lockdowns and everything associated with that?
I mean, see, it's hard. This is like a long answer because we were only a band for like a short period of time. Like our first show was like September 27th, 2019. So if you think about it, that's only like 6 months before COVID hit. Yeah. So we had really only played like 2 or 3 shows. We had a whole bunch of stuff planned for 2020. Right. Obviously that kind of, and then April 2020 was supposed to be when I went to go record that second record. But now everything that we recorded, there's like maybe one song is the same. You know, we just wrote new stuff. And so I'm like grateful for that because I had the time to really work on my songwriting and write better music. And even being in the studio was easier for me this time because I feel like I spent so much time learning how to demo at home because of the pandemic. I spent a lot more time in studios than I did on stages because of the pandemic. So, you know, going down and recording, being like, wow, like we almost used half of that take entirely for this track. Whereas, you know, the before times when you're not as comfortable in the studio, you're chopping up like one word at a time sometimes when it comes to a vocal comp. So I feel like I really improved my studio skills and got a lot more comfortable with my songwriting. So those were like positives there. But I have learned that I can't take on as much as I did pre-pandemic. Like it's a lot. I used to play shows every single weekend, if not Friday and Saturday, at least one day out of the weekend, plus work at the bar a couple days a week, plus work a full-time day job, plus there'd be rehearsals in there and a social life. And I just look back now, like, I don't know how I ever did that because I get so much more burnt out. But I also think we have to be gentle with ourselves and remember that it was a long adjustment to slow down. It was really hard for us to like stop and just, you know, the new normal, as everyone kept saying, but we had just in the same way, we have to be patient with ourselves to get used to being busy again. I think like for me, even being in a sold out show sometimes causes major anxiety because I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm ready for this. And we kind of just went like snapped our fingers and we're back in it. Right. So I think we, you know, I get a little bit, you know, hard on myself. I'm like, oh, I can't do it like I used to, or even my energy level on stage isn't the same as it used to be. But like, of course it's not. You just had 2 years off. So who is like, you know, what, like, do you think a Major League Baseball player is going to take 2 years off and then just like run back out and like without training and build up and easing back into it and just like slide right into the championship game after 2 years off? I don't think so. So I think I've like learned to try and be gentler with myself and more understanding, but there's definitely things that aren't as easy for me that used to be, but there's things that I feel like I've really improved on as well. You know what I mean? So there's kind of positives and negatives to both sides. I don't know if that answers your question.
Did you feel like you had a bit of ring rust even once you were on stage and performing for the first time and you know, and for that long period of time that you weren't able to do so? Did you feel some of those, more or less side effects, like holy shit, I gotta, you know, pick up the pace here, anything of that sort that comes to mind?
It's definitely, I'm just not in the same shape I used to be. I mean, ska is I always joke, I'm like, why did I start a ska band? Because like it's every song that we play live is upbeat, and it is, and like I'm sure you've heard the music, like I'm not just singing in my low comfortable range, I am belting. Like take a song like Soulmates and Strangers, like it is fast and it is belting like those top high notes, and it's hard. And then throw in, you know, 30-degree weather like we had last Friday at Bovine and no air conditioning and a crowded room full of people, and you're jumping running around and you're trying to put on this energetic performance, but it's just really, really hard because you just haven't done that in a long time. And, good for those people that like got into the gym over COVID. I mean, I think we all like to think that we were going to do that, but I definitely didn't. And I mean, like I said, I've had some health stuff going on too, that definitely makes it hard because I wasn't allowed to even really work out for a while. So I'm definitely not in the same shape that I used to be, but like, that's something I really need to work on. I feel like it's much harder for me to keep that energy level up, but I think I'll get there again. Like I played 3 shows and since the pandemic ended, basically like ended, we're still, I guess, in it, but since shows started again, I played 3. And I think the very first one back, there was like so much anxiety and it was, it was at the Phoenix. It was this huge venue and it was great, but it was only like 50% capacity, which was kind of good. So it wasn't that like sold out, like full throttle thing, but I think people were so happy that shows were back that it was okay. And we only played a 30-minute set, which was really, really great. But I did also, like, I say 3 shows, but that's with this band. Like I have cover bands I play with, and my AC/DC band did 3 sets one night about a month ago. And that was the hardest thing I've done in years. Cause it was like keeping your energy level up, like hard songs. AC/DC is very high, very high energy, and doing 45 minutes, 45 minutes and 45 minutes. And then, like even staying up till 2 a.m. and then loading out. I was like, I am too old for this now, but I know, I know it's not permanent. Like it's not always going to be that way. Like I know, like, and that's the thing. Like you can't look and be like, oh, I can't do this anymore. And it's like, okay, it took a while to like learn to be chill in COVID and not go out as much. And we have to like train our bodies to get back to that place that we were before. It's not going to happen, overnight.
Do you feel though that, once you started getting back into it there, did you have a moment when you looked at, once you started realizing how, you were back into the swing of things here, did you have any doubt that, can we still carry on this, despite the reception or despite the fact that, things are opening up bit by bit and we're getting more and more a leeway to be able to get around without having all these restrictions in place? Like, did you feel confident along the way as dealing with that, doing the shows and preparing, calling in for the next gig? And then understanding that there might be some new set of restrictions along the way that you have to prepare for that you obviously didn't think of beforehand because COVID wasn't a thing a couple of years ago. So anything changed along the way and how you are approaching the booking next gig or getting called for the next gig and how to accommodate, their regulations and having them accommodate to your more or less preparation, if you will?
I mean, not really. I'm a problem solver by nature. So I feel like I just, I always have a plan B, plan C, plan D, no matter what, anything I do. So I guess that didn't change. That's just the way I always am. I'm like, I would say I'm someone who has like very high functioning anxiety in the way that like everything that I do, I am always worried about what could go wrong. But because of that, I always have kind of a backup plan or another backup plan, or, it's like, if this happens, then this is what we'll do. And if this happens, is what we'll do. And of course, anytime you play a show, after, there's a chance it could get canceled and you just have to kind of roll with it. And like the show that we played in December at the Phoenix, December, the next day, everything was canceled for like months after that. So it's like shows started up again and then they canceled them. And I feel so bad for friends of mine that were supposed to play, I think like 2 days later at the same venue, and their show got canceled. I mean, I think that it's been played since they've rescheduled it, but I think, I remember just being like, how lucky are we that we got to play that show, because it would have been heartbreaking. Absolutely. But I haven't, I've been pretty lucky. As far as most of my shows getting canceled and disappointments happened in 2020. That was really hard because that happened all at once. It was like right before COVID. I remember I was like about to go to Vegas. I was about to go to California to record my second record. Then I had Decent Criminal actually was supposed to be in town staying with me because they had a little Canadian run of tour dates with, I think, Red City Radio. Then, so those got canceled. I was really looking forward to that. Then Punk Rock Bowling was supposed to be right after that, and that got canceled. And Punk Rock Bowling is like I don't even know how to explain. It's like my birthday party, Christmas, and every favorite day of the year all at once, because I have tons of friends that are all over like the States and Canada, you know, and it's the one event every year. I feel like those people all are in the same place. So it's just really, really cool. It's like a family reunion. So losing that was a really, really hard loss. So it was like, bam, 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 all these things just like canceled, and one would cancel. You'd be like, okay, well, maybe this next thing won't get canceled. And then like eventually I think after 6 months you realize you're like, everything's canceled. Like you know, you kind of have to lose the hope and let it go.
Well, so going to California recently here, was that the first trip you had made outside of Canada, going outside of Canada for the first time since the pandemic shut down?
No, that was definitely, when was the first time I left? I think the first traveling that I did, I actually went to the States in the middle of the pandemic, non-music related, to rescue 53 dogs. And I drove a rescue mission, picking dogs up in Texas and driving them back to Toronto for a rescue that I used to work for. And I don't want to mention them. They're a terrible rescue. And they've since had all these, newspaper articles come out about them. So I definitely don't want to give them a plug. But I am very passionate about animal rescue. So that was something we decided, me and my roommate did. And we actually got special permission to cross the border when everything was shut down because we were saving these dogs. So that was cool. And then, but we had to like quarantine for 2 weeks afterwards. It was like pretty interesting. And then when travel sort of opened up, my roommate and I went to Salt Lake City because my friend Grayson, who is in a band called Racist Kramer. And if you ever want to check out their music, they're actually fantastic as well.
You said Racist Kramer?
Yeah. And he co-wrote a couple of songs on the new record and actually plays bass on the record. So he was there with me this time around. But anyway, went to Salt Lake City to hang out with him. So that was the first time that I really traveled, like in the pandemic, like getting on an airplane and like crossing the border to the States, and then went to Vegas for punk rock bowling in September shortly after that. So
that's right.
I did quite a bit of traveling in September last year. And then that's when, after that trip, the health stuff kind of popped up and the traveling stopped. But yeah, so I didn't really I traveled as soon as I possibly could. I was just sitting there waiting, being like, the moment they open that border and I'm allowed to get on a plane, I'm going. So we did that.
I remember hearing something you said a while back, and I think you may have said it in one of your recent posts on social media, that when you went to, I think the handful of times you went out to California, that you really loved it out there.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. So, and I think if I recall reading correctly, I think you mentioned before, and I think you may have said it in one of your other interviews too, that that you considered moving out there at one point too.
Oh, I've been trying to move there since I was in the third grade. That's the first time I went to California. My dad took us to Disneyland and thought that we were just going to think it was the best thing ever. But I just wanted to like walk around California and look at palm trees and hang out in the pool. Like I had no interest in Disneyland or any of the kid stuff. I was like, what is this place? And I just, since I don't even know how old I was in the third grade, but I couldn't have been like older than 8 or 9. And just knew, I was like, I'm moving here. I made that decision. So when it's like, people were like, oh, at one time you wanted to, I was like, no, it's not at one time. That's never stopped. Like I still to this day would love to move there. It's just, it's difficult for some reason. I don't know why they treat Canadians like we're pretty much the same. I don't like, we share a piece of rock. I don't know why we can't just move down there, but it's the visa situation is definitely difficult. So
interesting. Very, very interesting. Well, so, but when you were down there in California though, you're obviously, you were there to record the record, but was there something out there that you took away from this time around that maybe you probably didn't notice the first time around visiting California, that you probably took either more appreciation of, or maybe you slightly changed your perception on something that you may have noticed before or probably didn't notice before, that you felt you walked away a different person from that?
No, I just love going, like my best friends all live out there. So like even just being there, and it's funny, it's like even Grayson and other friends, like they're like, you just look at home here. And I was like, cause I am. Like it was like getting there and just be like, this is just, you just feel, I don't want to sound cheesy, but like holding it. I was like, yeah, this is like that feels like home to me. And I got to see my friends that, are super important to me. And then I got to work with Rylan and Dave and Max from Half Past Two actually is helping on this record too, which is super exciting. And so that Max was probably the one thing that was different. I didn't know Max before, and we actually got to know each other in the studio. It was really cool because I knew of Half Past Two, and Tara and I had a relationship.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah,
gonna say
like
next.
Tara,
Yeah,
yeah, Tara and I are like, we're friends, but I got to meet Tara as well because we were just like internet friends, right? Like
right.
we had mutual friends, but we had never actually met. We had talked. But I got to meet Max and Tara. That was really cool. But it didn't change anything because it's like, oh, it's just even more reason to like why I love it here. I don't even know what it is. It's so hard to explain. I don't want to seem like a traitor to all the Canadians out there. It's just, it's, maybe it's because, like so many people down there are all in music as well, but it's just kind of like, I love the sun. I love the nice weather. I hate snow. I hate the winter. Like I grew up in Alberta. Like I would be so happy to live somewhere where I never had to see snow ever again for the rest of my life. That would be great. But it's not even about that. Like California is just, I think all my favorite people live there. Essentially, like anytime I think about like my favorite people, and no offense again to those who live in Canada, but like they all live in California. It's just my happy place. So yeah, maybe it wouldn't be quite the same if it was my home, because then there would be like the stresses that come with it, whatever. But it's just, yeah, if I could only take one trip to one place for the rest of my life, like I wouldn't pick Australia or, Thailand or one of these, or somewhere in Europe. Like I would be like, okay, if I could only go on one more trip, for the rest of my life, I would be like, I'm going to go to California, like not like LA, like Beverly Hills, like, it's like I spent a lot of time in like the Valley or in like Orange County specifically, like in Fullerton, Anaheim kind of area. And I love that. So, everyone has their opinions about California, but it's a big place. So I think it depends who what circle you're in when you're there.
So here's what I wanted to jump into next year with you, because when the one thing I wanted to get your perspective on here, because you've shared a lot of this insight about how how much you enjoy performing and making music, but the one thing I don't think I recall ever you mentioned too much about, maybe you did, I just don't remember off the top of my head here, but I was really curious about your perspective on making music videos here, because music videos are, for a lot of people, can be either they love it or they hate it, or they're kind of like have a love-hate relationship with it.
Yeah.
But I was actually really curious about your perspective on that, because it's not an easy thing to do. I would say, from what I understand, and I've only seen a handful of people actually do it in real life, and it seems like a very boring process when you really look at it from behind the scenes, at least from what I've seen. But I'm curious for your perspective about what's your take on that? Because I know you did a music video not too long ago here, but I was actually really curious about how if you have a preference about, if it was up to you, would you prefer doing a certain style of video making that you think would be best fitting for the music that you want to play with, or if you have something that you prefer not to do when it comes to the music, where if I can avoid doing music videos, I would just do live music recording and then go on tour. Like, I'm curious to see what your perspective on that is.
I hate being on video. Like I absolutely hate it. Like, as we sit here on video, I can record. I don't mind. Like, I don't know what it is. I think it's like interviews kind of stress me out, but like music videos really stress me out. Like I don't like being in front of the camera. I don't know why. Like it makes me uncomfortable. I guess maybe because I was never really good at drama or acting or anything, but I just hate like the sight of myself on like even photo shoots and pictures, like trying to like post pictures on social media. It's so hard for me because I really have a hard time with it. Some people are just naturals. And I remember we shot a music video for Lies like before the pandemic hit, which was like, we were so excited about it. And then looking at all the footage, I was like, I hate this. Like, I can't stand like the sight of myself. Like and again, it's not a vanity thing. Like, it's just a comfort thing. Like I haven't done a lot of videos. I haven't done a lot of like filming type stuff. So I think it's just, it takes a while for me to get comfortable. I've even like reached out being like, okay, how can I put out a music video for this new single, but not be in it? Like, I would love to put out a music video, but like not be seen anywhere in it or have it be
like the Elton John approach, basically. Cause that's what Elton John was doing. He's like, I'm tired of seeing myself in the music video. So I put in other actors, other people to replace, myself. So is that more or less
make it like a movie? Like the Flatliners have a really great one where it's just a bunch of people who keep going up singing the song at a karaoke bar. I thought that was genius because none of them are even in the video. None of them had to be available for it, Right. But like music videos are also expensive too. And I mean, when Fuck You COVID came out, I was like, okay, we have to do a video. But it was we had to just shoot it at home because we weren't allowed to be together. We couldn't get a bunch of people together to shoot a video. So that worked out where I just like sent out an email to a bunch of friends being like, hey, if you want to send in some footage for this video, do it. And Michael Kirsty put it all together. It was great. But I was like, I can't do that for every single video that follows. I have to actually come up with creative ideas. And like, I've got creativity when it comes to writing songs and stuff, but video ideas, I'm like, I have no idea. Like, that's just not in my wheelhouse. So I don't know. I'm weird about videos. I feel uncomfortable. Like even when people send me like videos of shows, like I have a really, really hard time watching it after, or like my interviews that I've done, I have a really hard time watching those. I don't know why. It's just a weird thing I have.
Well, I guess I'm curious about to dig into to a little further, because the thing is that when you're saying that, it's interesting because you're in a position where you're in front of an audience and you're in, you post yourself on social media, and it's obvious, it's necessary, kind of a necessary evil in a lot of ways, where you have to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
But what I found really interesting, you said this, because even now when we're talking here, I don't get that impression of you, and I understand what you mean by how you feel. Because I'll be honest, because I edit the videos myself and I'm putting it all together. I'm like, God, look the way I look, or look at the way I probably sound ridiculous, or why did I ask this question? Like, there's a lot of insecurities from my perspective of how I look at that, but you don't strike me as that way at all, because you seem very comfortable with yourself. Seeing the footages I've seen of you doing live shows and you conducting yourself here in this interview, you don't really strike me that way. So I'm wondering for yourself,
like live shows are different though. Like live shows, you're not acting, right? I feel like it's like the acting part of the show thing. Well,
I think what I'm referring to, the fact is that you put yourself out there in the public eye in respects to how getting awareness, right? So when you're talking to me here, I'm picturing what it was that would have helped. Where did you learn to develop the skill to be able to just do it? Because if you're very uncomfortable with it, there had to have been something you have to overcome to be able to do this here without without having to what's the best way to say it, without having to really struggle in having to do this every single, because I guess it's not the best way to ask you, but if you struggle with it here, I'm wondering what it was you did to overcome it, because that to me is actually the really interesting part that I really want to know how you deal with it, despite the fact you're extremely uncomfortable from what I'm understanding here.
Well, I like to do things that scare me. I think that's important, right? Like I always try to push myself outside my comfort zone, because a lot of the best things that have ever happened to me have me being like, I don't like that. And then next thing you know, it's something that works for you, right? So, I mean, a good example is like I work in sales for my day job. I'm a headhunter, right? And I have to cold call strangers up all the time. And I remember when I first started working that job, I was like, I'm not doing the sales part. I'm just going to do this part. Like, I don't want to make calls. I don't want to talk to strangers. I don't want to do that. My hands would shake. My voice would shake. But it just took years of like practicing and working at it. Cause I mean, everyone sees like, oh, you're in a band, you perform, you're clearly like being the center of attention. I'm like, I'm an introverted extrovert. Like I have my moments where I'm extroverted, but I 100% love to just be alone in my room and not talk to people. I will play a show and I will have major anxiety and I will have to go sit like in the green room and just like be alone to like prep myself for that show. And I think a lot of people think like, oh, like, maybe you're being snobby or whatever, but it's just, I have anxiety and I'm an introvert. Sometimes I really need to be alone to recharge my batteries. So it is difficult to be, in the spotlight and the center of attention, which like not a lot of people in bands will say, but it's, the Amy Gabba that you see on stage. I'm not that person 24 hours a day. I try to explain that to, you go on a date with a guy and they're like, oh, Amy Gabba, and they kind of like freak out over the show, but you're like, that's who I am, like maybe 5 hours a month. Like that's not who I am 24 hours a day. They don't want you to be human, but I am. And I have things that scare me and I had my insecurities and I have those things that I'm trying to work on. So I think, like doing what I do for a living, like in sales definitely helped because I have to talk to strangers all the time and try to be confident with that. And then I'm a manager where I train other people to do it. So by teaching other people how I kind of worked through those challenges, but again, like I don't shy away from things just because they scare me and just because they make me uncomfortable doesn't mean I'm not going to do it. I'm still going to try, but like if I try it a few times, I'm like, okay, I've given this like a true shot. Like I've really given it my best, but it's not for me, then I won't continue with it. But I will try almost anything like at least once and see, like how many bands have there been where I'm like, I do not like that band. And then I go to their show and I'm like, now I'm obsessed with this band. And if I would have just had that closed-minded kind of angle, I never would have gone to that show. Like Weezer was one of those bands. I remember like I heard the Sweater song. I'm like, this doesn't do anything for me. Incubus is another. It was like that Drive song did nothing. And then I went to the show and I remember just like my jaw on the ground. Comeback Kid recently, like Andrew, I don't know if you know Comeback Kid, they're a hardcore band. I don't like hardcore music. I like really don't. It's not for me. Been to a couple shows. I've almost had my nose broken in the pit accidentally. Like I do not like it. I like things I can sing along to, with my girly voice that I have. But going to that show, I remember sending him a message being like, you like inspired the crap out of me watching you. Like you didn't even have to move. And he just like commanded that crowd the way that it was almost like he reached his hand out like Ursula and the like Little Mermaid and like grabbed them all, and everybody was just frozen on him. And it's like, I did not want to go to that show. I had someone beg me to go and kind of guilt me into it. And I remember being cranky as hell because I did not want to be there. And then it being like one of the best experiences of my life. So I think I'm able to kind of look at those experiences and be like, hey, remember that time you didn't want to do this thing because it made you uncomfortable and then now you love it? I kind of try to remember that in all things so that I can motivate myself to still go outside my comfort zone every now and then.
I'm actually curious about something that you brought up. For some reason, you said something that made me want to ask you this year. I think it had to do with the fact that where you were talking about how people respond to certain things you do and then how you respond to other things that you didn't like very much, and then you get yourself integrated, and then all of a sudden you become a fan of the music or who the artist is. But the question that I thought of here was that I'm actually really curious about your perspective, because I think you may be the first person, at least as far as musicians are concerned, that I'm asking this question here to, where critiques, how do you handle that for yourself? Because I would imagine in the beginning when you first started, and I'm talking about critiques in various forms. There are people that have seen you for the first time when you first were starting, and then how you progress along the way with your music and who else you played with here that have developed your musicianship here. And then I would imagine certain critiques that may have bothered you before may don't bother you as much as before, or maybe they still do, but you can handle it a bit better now. So I'm wondering how you handle that for yourself, especially now that you've been, since the shutdown had happened, then getting back into the swing of things. I'm wondering if a lot of things have changed for yourself along the way about how you handle critiques, whether it be positive, negative, whatever the case may be.
I mean, it depends what the critique is. Like, I think the things that upset me are the ones that are, how do I say, like just kind of unfair and like not accurate. Like they're, how do I explain? Okay. So like if somebody's like, I don't like that Amy Gabba band because I hate ska, totally cool. That's not personal. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like I remember someone, like we do a cover of You Shook Me All Night Long by AC/DC, but we do a ska version. And I know like someone recently posted being like, this is my least favorite song in the entire world, but somehow when it's a ska song, I like it now. And I was like, I like that. That's cool. Right? Like, it's just, they don't like AC/DC and that's not their kind of music and they don't like that song, but you can sometimes be wrong, where you're like, oh, usually this isn't my thing, but now it is. Right. So, but like, for example, I saw some person on Reddit had like, and again, this isn't me scouring Reddit looking for things. For some reason, people like to send me things that they find on Reddit. Right. In my mind, maybe they think they're being helpful, but I'm sensitive. So, and this one person is like, basically just saying that I have some big record label and manager company that's like trying to like spam Reddit with my music to get people to like it. And because someone had posted being like, oh my God, I just discovered this really great record. I love it. And some guy's like, oh yeah, when you pay enough for your record label and your manager to put your stuff up online, then, of course people are going to like something like that. And I was like, I do this all myself. I don't have a manager. Like, I don't like allegedly records again, like we haven't released any music through them. Everything. I'm an indie DIY project, and Amy Gabba and the Almost Famous is Amy Gabba and my friends that I asked to come play shows with me. Like there is no team. There's no, like big corporate conglomerate, or I'm not an industry transplant. Like you get accused of these things that you're just like, that's so outrageous. And you're spreading misinformation and you're just, trying to take away from something that, it should be a compliment. It's kind of a backhanded compliment in a way there, but it's like when I think the criticisms that I have a problem with are the ones that are just like based on something completely not factual, right?
So no substance, basically.
Sorry?
No substance behind the critique.
Yeah, no substance at all. And people just like will 100% just make something up and like with zero research, not even look into it. It's like if you bothered to look or even go to a website or something, you would see how like completely wrong you are. You're just being a dickhead, pardon my language. But some people just, they like that, right? Like they're fine with that. They don't want to be accurate. And I think that's what bothers me. But if you're like, hey, I don't like your music because that's not my thing, I would be like, that doesn't bother me. I'm not going to take that personally. There's certain kinds of music that I don't like either, you know, or certain things that like just don't do it for me. And it's not a personal attack, but it is a personal attack when you have some sort of criticism or you're spreading bullshit that's not real and it's not true. And I think that's the stuff that I kind of have a hard time with, where you want to correct it and you want to respond. And I'm just like, I've learned to just like, just let it go because it really doesn't matter, and focus on the people that do appreciate the music that you write and do like you. And, you know, even that same person was like, well, I'll admit I haven't even listened to the record. And I was like, then what are you doing? I know you're just being a jerk to be a jerk. And so they don't matter. And I know that. I'd like to say that I'm a thick-skinned individual, but it's definitely something I've had to work on since I was a little girl, right? Like I used to sing in singing competitions and not win. And it would just like break my heart. I tried out for Canadian Idol when I was in high school. And I remember them being like, you're a nice singer. Like your voice is nice, but there's literally nothing special about you. And just being like gutted because Sass Jordan, my rock and roll idol, is the one saying this to me. And I was just like, I never want to sing again. And after, I just remember being like, looking back now, being like, oh my God, imagine if I just never sang again because of that. Right. So it's good that you don't let them win, but it's hard sometimes. And I think people need to not be reckless with other people's feelings like they are. Like they just don't have any empathy or, you know, put themselves in someone else's shoes to understand how hurtful the things that they say can be. But, you know, I also am a little bit different. Like I didn't try to start a band and get attention and with these like intentions, you know, behind it. It was more, we ended up in the studio for fun, writing some songs, decided to record them. Then we had this EP, like, oh, might as well throw it online. Like there was no business plan that we were following. We were like, let's start a band and make $1 million. And then we're going to tour. We're going to do this. It was like, music went up online. And then all of a sudden there was like, okay, well, I guess we have to do a release show. Oh my God, I don't have a band. Let's get some people together. Right. So, it was, I never really wanted to the attention bit and, you know, a lot of the stuff that comes with it. I don't think that I was really naive and not even considering that was going to be a thing. And so I wasn't prepared for it. So I think I struggled with it a lot in the beginning and I've really worked on it since then, but that it is still something that I find difficult because I just want to write songs that make other people know that they're not alone and help me feel good about what I've been through. Like I don't do it for attention or for money because I'm telling you, there's no money in this. Like all the money that I make, I work a day job to fund this because it is expensive and I never ever come out anything but red, and that's fine. But I think people don't really realize that either. You know, it's really, this is my hobby. Like I know it's a business, and I guess technically, but it's not. It's just something. If it's not fun for me anymore, it doesn't make me happy, I'm not going to do it anymore. So I try to keep it light if I can, and so that's why I try not to take that stuff to heart. But it's definitely hard when you know you're people like, well, you asked for this when you started the band. I'm like, but I didn't. I didn't ask for anything. This was never, ever like what my intention was. I never thought it would get to this point. I never thought that I would have people asking me to do interviews or, you know, like that. It blows my mind sometimes. And I think even in the pandemic, things have changed because there's been a lot more listening to things online and discovering new projects. And, you know, I went to a show recently and strangers, you know, coming out being like, I just want to tell you, I really like your music. And you're just like, flabbergasted by that because that's never happened to me before, right? And so things change and my life is different now, and I don't want to say like it's, you know, completely different. It's not, but there are little changes and little things that you realize, and it's crazy when you think about how naive you were that you never saw any of that coming at all.
There's something that I really was interested in asking you because you know, the way things have changed right now in today's environment where, you know, there's a lot more awareness of, you know, representation, things of that nature. But what I'm really curious about with you though, and why I'm bringing this up here is because you had mentioned a story a while back, and I hope you don't mind me getting into this here. And I'm not asking for specifics, but I'm asking just about your experience, about how you feel things are going for you now in that respect, where, because, you know, you are a woman and in the industry that, you know, you're pursuing a goal to make music. And then if it turns into a full-time gig, then, that's a piece of the puzzle that you're putting together here, which is still a journey you still have to continue doing to be able to maintain that. But a lot of things I remember you had said in the past where there were certain hurdles that certain people are expecting some things of you.
Oh yeah.
And if they didn't get what they wanted, then as a result of that, you were not able to get that deal or get that opportunity because they wanted something from you specifically.
Yeah.
Whatever the situation was. But what I found really interesting was that, because again, I've heard these stories before, but the thing that I found interesting with you is that it seems like there was something specific about what they wanted from you. And then there was this whole jealousy thing behind it. Well, why are you talking to this person? I was working with you about this. And that was the part that I found really interesting. But since that time and where you are with yourself now and the way things are moving here for you, has anything in that regard changed for you at all about how people approach you and talk to you, or how you approach that situation that you are prepared for now because you've had those experiences where you realize, you have to develop a callus, but you also have to be able to develop a way to communicate and read the situation better, because the way this guy approached me, I thought we were cool. And then all of a sudden I found they have an ulterior motive.
Oh yeah.
This guy I thought had an ulterior motive, but really wasn't like that. And I realized, wait a minute, there was a great opportunity that I could have conversed with them about this and that. So I'm curious to see what your perspective on that now is for you, because I'm wondering if that, because there's more awareness of various things out there, if you starting to feel the side effects of how it can be turned more into a positive situation for yourself.
Oh God. See, I'm a little torn about how honest to be, but I mean, I guess I can talk about it because there's a song about it on the new record. Like, I was actually sexually assaulted by a producer I was working with during the pandemic. And again, I don't want to go into details and I don't want to make a big deal. I'm not going to call him out on social media. I'm not getting into that. I am not interested in that. I am dealing with it in my own way. I wrote a song about it called How Dare You. I'm really excited for everyone to hear, because that is how I deal with things. So I still get taken advantage of. I still am naive, and I have to stop blaming myself that I didn't see things like this coming. I still get used. I still have, guys that want to take me out on a date just because it's like a bragging right, like not because I'm an actual human being. Like, I went out with someone recently that was like, oh yeah, like, it was just cool to be seen with her. And like, that shit fucking hurts. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel good. So there's always I've kind of thickened my skin up a little bit to it, being like, people are always going to want something from you, and there's always going to be people that will use you. You just have to be more careful about who you let in, and have your guard up more, and be careful. And so I've learned a lot, like with my naivety. I've learned that now when I do work with somebody, I get things in writing up front, and that, I don't have those, things where someone's like, oh, let me play this show for you. And then, all of a sudden like, oh yeah, I need $300 to play that show. Like the day before they change their mind about what they want. Like, people try to pull stuff like that. And right. I think I've learned how to protect myself a little bit more with it. I also have a lot less tolerance for people who just don't make me feel good, or who I get the feeling are leeching off, you know what I mean, or in it for the wrong reasons, or that they're going to do that thing where they hold something over my head, because there's a lot of them out there. And I wish I could say that people are all good, but they're not. And that's one thing this whole music adventure has taught me, is that people only care about what you can do for them, and how you, I shouldn't say people, some people, they are working with you because it benefits them, and they really don't give an F about who you are. You know what I mean? And it's sad, but that is kind of this industry, especially as a woman. And, like even after that sexual assault thing happened that I mentioned, I was working with another group of people. We were working on a new record, and like, even like the empathy that they had once I told them what happened was really good for about 2 days. And then after that, it was like, I remember the next time we were in the studio, and they're like, why are you being so weird about being in the studio? Like, you need to be more confident in this. And I was like, do you realize this is the first time I've been in another studio since that happened in a studio? So like, where's your compassion and your empathy? Like, I do feel like people, they forget, you know what I mean? Like what it's like to go through something like that. And they're always gonna be like, oh yeah, I'm here for you if you need me, and we totally got your back. And then, 2 days later, it's like it never happened. And it's just back to, okay, what are you gonna do for me? And I need you to deliver this. So like, what's changed? Nothing really in comparison to what we talked about before. In some ways, I guess it got worse, but I've learned a lot, and I'm not as afraid, because I do, like, again, I know that mentioning what happened, like, that's a big deal. That's not something that's going to happen on the regular. I am, never ever going to let anything like that ever happen again, as much as I can help it. But there's crappy, crummy people out there, especially in music, that either want to see how you can help them, kind of climb some sort of ladder or help their music career or help them meet somebody at a show that they want to, or get guest list somewhere. Or there's going to be people that are, I get, like, we all kind of network, right? So I don't want to say that we're using each other in a way, but we kind of are, but it's supposed to be this symbiotic thing. It's not just supposed to be this fake thing, but it, like,
mutual respect, basically.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, like, it's really lonely. Like, not to get all deep and personal, but it's really, really lonely, because sometimes you just, like, you don't know who you can trust, and someone new comes into your life and you're like, okay, what are their intentions, right? And sometimes it's a long game and you don't really find out till later. So it's hard, and it's lonely, and I don't think that's ever really going to change, sadly. But I have found, certain people that are like my rocks that I know I can trust and I can talk to about it. And, Mabel Syndrome, for example, I don't know if you know about the Female Punk Rock Collective. It's some of my best friends I've met through that group. They were the first podcast interview I ever did. Actually, they took a chance on me before my record was even out.
I think I may have seen that one.
Yeah, you might have seen it. It's the very first one I've ever done. And
it's like from a few years ago, right?
It would have been 2019. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I did see that one. Yeah.
Yeah. And I am so eternally grateful. And I know those are my people. Like, I know that I can trust them. And I know that, there's a safe place there. So you've got to find the people that you can trust and the ones that are safe. And sometimes you're still going to be wrong. And I just have to be okay with that. You got to be okay with the fact that sometimes people are still going to hurt you. But that says more about them than it does about you. And I have to stop, blaming myself, being like, I should have seen that coming, right? Like, when people are manipulative or untruthful, that's their decision they're making. So there's a reason why you're not spotting that every time. So I'm always going to try to believe in the good in people, but I definitely have more boundaries, and I'm a lot more careful than I used to be, because I have had to learn some hard lessons. So
I think that's why I was really interested in asking this, because every person's journeys, I mean, maybe the struggles they go through is virtually the same, but the variations of those struggles can obviously is going to be different for everybody. But and that was the reason why I wanted to ask you about that, because I think a lot of people don't truly understand certain struggles that a person may go through. Some, bigger than others, but the struggles that you mentioned, the one thing you mentioned that was really, that I thought was really, I'm going to say is really important to highlight, was that the fact that you said it was a very lonely process. And that's something that I don't even think I truly understood that. And I think some people overlook those type of situations where you mentioned before, hey, I got your back. I never really considered that at all, about how
it's crazy. I say it all the time. I'm like, it's crazy to me that I can stand in a crowded room and still feel so alone. And again, that's not being dramatic. That is a song lyric in a way, I guess, right? But it's true. It's like, and I hear a lot of artists talk about it, where, it's like you get people and they're paying you compliments and they're saying nice things, and that's great, but they don't know you. Right. They're talking about that person they just saw performing on stage. They don't know who you really are. I'm like, oh my God, you're great. I love you. And you're like, cool. Like, you like my music and you like the way that I play songs, and that's great. But like, for a meaningful connection, like, that's, it feels pretty superficial, and it is very lonely for sure, because again, it doesn't necessarily like stroke your ego, because you're just kind of like, but really, like, what do you know about me? You know what I mean? Like, this, you're paying me compliments. That's great. But like, the words that you're saying, it's like, you can't possibly know that because we've never even met before. Right. So there's like this crazy, it's almost like you're looking and talking to all these people through like a piece of plexiglass. You know what I mean? Like, you're separated from everybody, but you're still in the same kind of room, so to speak. Like, it's a surreal thing that I guess I can never really explain properly, but I do like to talk to other people in bands about it. And like, I totally get that. Like, the Interrupters just put a song out recently called Anywhere Was Better Than Where.
Yeah, that's a great song. I love that song.
Yeah, and I really identify with the lyrics, because she's like, I felt alone yet smothered. Like, that's literally the feeling. Like, you feel alone yet smothered, and it's like, but everyone is staring at me, and it's just kind of like, yeah, like, it's still, it's like, you'd think, even, family, like, Amy, since you were a little girl, this is what you wanted. You want to be on stage and you want to be the center. And you're like, but I don't. Like, it's not like this. Like, it's not what you think. Everybody always thinks it's going to be the best feeling in the world, but it's actually very, very lonely, and it can be really hard on your mental health. And I've definitely had those struggles with it. And again, like this, I don't want to sound like, oh, poor me, but it's, when you stop to really think about it, I think a lot of people are like, oh, I've never thought about that before, but it's true. It's like, you really gotta have your people. because it can be a really lonely experience. And especially like when you're in a band, that's a little bit different too, right? You've got your bandmates, you've got that family, but I don't have that. And like, would I like to? Absolutely. But, you know, I've had some experiences where I'm just like, oh, you know, it just makes me want to be more independent from it, because then, you know, when these situations happen, like what I just talked about, you're kind of like, okay, it's just me on my own. And I just need to have these walls up and just handle it on my own. So yes, it's lonely, but you kind of choose that in a way too, to protect yourself, I guess.
Interesting. Well, I think so because since we're nearing the hour market, I wanted to basically close up with this here because and I hope this, you know, this is not going to be a downer for anyone who's listening and watching this. But the thing is that I'm glad you pointed it out here, because the thing that I'm taking away from what you're expressing here to me is that, you know, the hurdles that you're going through right now, and I know a lot of other people have their variations of their hurdles, but the thing that I found really interesting about, you know, you sharing this story here and sharing certain experiences you've gone through, you're still pursuing your passion. You're still pursuing, you know, and
I'm doing it for me. And that's the part
right.
I'm going to stay focused on, is I'm doing it because it makes me happy.
Right.
And the moment that it doesn't, or if it ever doesn't anymore, then I'll find a different way to make that work. Right. But it's
Right.
like, I have to remind myself I'm not doing it for other people. I'm not trying to please anybody. I'm
Right.
not trying to impress anybody. If you like my music, I love that. That's great. I hope
Right.
it helps you. I hope it has an impact. If it doesn't, no sweat off my back. Like, it's just not your thing. That's cool. Right. So I'm still doing it because I need to. Like, this is how I work through some of the hardest times in my life, is by writing songs about it. Right. So you know, like some people, they've got sports, or they've got therapy, or they've got painting, or they, you know what I mean, other outlets, but this is mine. So I think that's kind of how I release things and how I move on. You know, shitty things happen and I write a song about it, and I get to continue to share that music. And I think every time I do, it's just like, it's like a therapy session. Right. So it's like you're making good things out of some ugly things. And I think that's kind of the meaning of life, really. It's just like what you have to do to keep going. Right. It's like when shitty things happen, it's like, hey, how are you going to make that a lesson? Or how are you going to make that, you know, like, it's the whole lemons into lemonade thing. I know it sounds so cheesy, but bigger than that, more than just lemonade. Like, how are you going to turn this, you know, into like this ugly duckling into a swan, essentially, and make it something that's of substance, or something that's helpful, or something that adds value.
Yeah. And again, that's what I'm trying to highlight here, because I think, you know, the fact that you're having these rough patches and you're going through it, that I find that quite beautiful, that, and not just yourself, with anyone who's going through this here as well too, that despite those issues that you're being dealt with here, you're still pursuing what makes you happy. And I think that's a wonderful thing that I think most people tend to overlook. But they think, well, if you're miserable, why are you still doing this? Because I love it.
Yeah.
So
well, I'm not miserable. Yeah. Like, I want to make that.
I'm not. I'm sorry. I don't mean
it's hard
here. Yeah.
But if anything, if it was just smooth sailing all the time and it wasn't a challenge and it didn't build any character, would it be worth doing? Probably not.
Yeah.
I don't want, like, I always joke to people, I'm like, I'm meant to date like guys that are just absolute jerks, because then it gives me something to write about. Imagine how crappy my songs would be if I was in like a long-term committed relationship for 10 years, right? Like, I wouldn't have anything to sing about. So it's half kidding, but it also is, I think that is like kind of my journey, is to, you know, like, life isn't going to be great all the time. And I'm okay with that. I think it's how you handle it and how you move past it and how it grows you. And like, if somebody else is going through something similar and then they hear your story, and that's why I also try to be honest too. Like, I know I overshare, but at the same time, if somebody else has gone through something similar and this can help them, and knowing they're not alone, then that's a good thing. Right. So.
Well, I think if on that note, I'll close it off there, because I think, you know, with what you just said, there was actually quite impactful. So I guess now for the camera, what I want to say to you is that I've been looking forward to speaking with you for quite some time.
Me too. And I'm so sorry it took so long.
No, don't feel bad. And I'm sorry if I made it, because I was trying to be very careful how I would.
Oh, no, I know.
So,
you weren't trying to, there wasn't a guilt trip there or anything, but that was the first thing I wanted to bring up. You're like, oh my God, like, thank you for sticking with me and for following up. Cause it was honestly it's just a lot sometimes, like, on your own. And I've learned that I have to be like, hey, I need time. Like, I can't do this right now.
No, and I get it too. But again, it was one of those things that I want to be very careful in how I approach it, because it's the first time actually talking with somebody under these circumstances, and so it's new to me to be able to to be able to touch on this here. But I want to thank you for giving me the time, because I know you're really busy with a lot of things you're doing here. So the fact you've given me this amount of time to converse with me, I really do appreciate that. So I do want to say that I am really looking forward to, with what you just shared with me now, with your experiences you've had here, and then the songs you have written with the group that's going to be coming out soon. I'm actually really looking forward to see what new shot of life you have with the music that
Yeah.
you've had before, but now that you've had the time away from that, I'm really excited to see what's coming out with this new record that you have working on here, because I'm really excited to see what other stories are going to be sharing here, but the sound that'll come with it as well too, to complement the story
Yeah.
as well
And you know
too.
what? Like I'm real, there's a lot of like nerves that comes with that. Like, cause I worry about everything and I'm like,
Yeah.
what if everybody is like, oh, this new record sucks and Hard is Stupid was so much better. And there will be those people. I have to accept
Yeah.
that. There's going to be people that are like, no, the first one was way better. I don't like this, because the second one is a lot more honest. I really bare my soul on those songs. You know, I did in the first one too. It was about a really difficult breakup, but
Right.
you know, this is a little bit deeper than this and a little bit more personal and a little bit more, you know, there's a lot more pain, I think, in it, but it's also like about turning, like I said, the pain into power. It's about, you know, kind of, you know, that's what's beautiful about ska. You can write a song that's maybe about a downer topic, but then you put on upstrokes and some, you know, like a good ska beat
That
rhythm and you're like,
dichotomy.
okay, now I'm
Yeah.
happy. Yeah. So I think it is different, but I do think it's like you can hear that I've grown a little bit. I think you can hear me growing up. I think you can, I've also learned what works better for me. You know, that
Right.
first record is really high. I'm like, God, why did I write this in these keys? So the range of my vocal, yeah, I still belch out the high notes on this one, but I think like I found more keys to write in that I'm a little bit more comfortable in. And I've a little bit more like different style. Like it's still Amy Gabba sounding, but I think I've grown a little bit as well. So I hope people agree. And again, you know, I can't stand still and I can't just put out the same record over and over and over. And I don't think anyone's going to want me to. So if you don't like it, I'm sorry, but keep listening to the old one then.
All right. So on that note, we'll go ahead and end it here. But I want to give you your props here for what you have given me here, and for looking forward to see the new set of projects you have coming down the pipe, because I'm really looking forward to see with what you had, what's in the works here. Because having you share the story, I'm very, very excited to see what's coming up down the line here. So thank you for giving me.
No, it's my pleasure. I really enjoyed our chat.
All right. Well, let me go ahead and hit